This is Marketing Over Coffee with Christopher Penn and John Wall.
Good morning. Welcome to Marketing Over Coffee. I'm John Wall. Today, I am so excited. My VA said, hey, do you want to have Jay Schwedelson on? And I said, oh my God, yes. Like, why has he not been on already? Because I have just seen him everywhere. You've basically become the leading voice in email. You know, we've tracked it for years. That's been our big thing. And you have a bunch of other events. You've got your own agency, a million things going on. So Jay, thanks for joining us today.
Honestly, it's an honor, truly an honor to be here. I've been a fan of your content and what you all have been doing because you've been doing it for a long time. Not just the podcast, but the newsletter, all stuff. So you guys are crushing it, and it's amazing to be here.
I want to dig in. We want to get your backstory because I hear so much about what you got going on now. But were you 4 years old and saying, hey, I want to become the leader in email subject lines? I mean, how did this start for you?
Oh, I'll try to give you the non-boring version. So I grew up in a household around marketing. So my mom was a school teacher and my dad worked at a magazine company in the late 70s. And the company he worked for, it closed. And he was like, wow, people are starting to do a lot of direct mail back then. He's like, I think I could like do some of this direct mail list data stuff in the late 70s, early 80s. And they started a business in our garage that was all about trying to help catalogers and direct mail newsletter publishers, all these people. And so from the time I was literally, like you said, 4 years old at my kitchen table, we had no garage. Every night at dinner, we talked about marketing. I was stuffing, envelopes. And I mean, that's all, literally all I knew. And in college, I started up an internet advertising company in the early 90s when they didn't even exist. And that did well for a little bit. And then what I realized was that the reason I got so hot into email was when you look at all the different platforms that are out there, search is dominated by, one player, right? Internet advertising is dominated by a handful of players in a lot of ways. And I was like, what is the most decentralized kind of thing that's a channel that everybody loves, everyone does, and everyone needs? And to me, it was email. Email is kind of like the cockroach. It won't go away. And everybody does it. Every company needs it. And it's a mess. It's impossible to get your arms around. And when I see a category that's impossible to get your arms around, I'm like, oh, there's a role there for an agency, marketing service providers, thought leadership. So that's why I leaned into email. And so email is a big part of what I do. But ironically, it's less than 50% of the revenue of all the business stuff that I do. But I'm a believer for anybody in business. It's good to be known for something. Because when you're known for something, it's an entree point into a lot of other things. So that's why I tried to become known for email, just that way I could permeate through with all this other stuff. But that's my boring backstory.
Oh, no, this is, I know you didn't want to dive in a lot into direct mail, but I have a bunch of direct mail experience too. And it's so funny. Yeah. Your story is so similar to the Mailworks. They talk about how Bree there, her mom was, working in the basement to get started and all that. So I
know the Mailworks well. I mean, listen, I still love direct mail. We do a ton of direct mail and the direct mail industry has gone through, massive, massive change. But forever, I mean, direct mail was my life.
You just came off a virtual direct mail event.
Yeah.
And I have to ask you this, I'd worked in events for years and years. Did you decide to go all virtual from day one? Or was there a time when you were like, hey, we might end up in conference centers? Or how did that all come around?
Yeah. So my core business for the last 20 zillion years has been my agency. I had an agency forever. And then what happened was during COVID, I got about 100 people in this agency. And during COVID, I got scared. I thought I was going to go out of business because I had this payroll, right? And all the marketing budgets were getting radically slashed. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't want to furlough anybody. I didn't want to let anybody go, but it was a weird time during COVID. And I was like, how can I stay in business? And I said, I need to meet a lot of people. At the time, I'd never really posted on LinkedIn. I wasn't a poster. And so I started doing that. And I said, well, what if I put on a conference, a virtual conference that didn't suck? I made it, fun, exciting, different, whatever. I go, I can meet a lot of people that way. And so that's what we did. We launched a conference back in COVID, this virtual conference called Guru Conference, which was about email marketing. And because I think we made it a little bit different and crazy, it did well. We had like 14,000 people during COVID. I'm like, whoa. And then I said, this is a separate type of business. So that's why I started this other media company and started rolling out lots of virtual events about email, about event marketing, about direct mail, about everything. And what I've realized about virtual events is that the concept is stained. People think, oh, they're boring. Nobody will attend. That only worked during COVID. And the reality of it is, people just look at them wrong. So what we try to do, for example, is everything we do is free. Can't pay me for any of it to attend. We don't do on demand. If you don't show up, you don't see it. We try to treat it like an in-person event. And that is what we do. And it works really, really well. And then we add fun to it. We add, crazy celebrities, and we add dance contests and karaoke, and you try to add some humanity to it. And the reason we do it virtually is it's a lot cheaper. I mean, doing an in-person event costs a boatload of money. It's a roll of the dice, and you just don't need to do it. So that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, so it's a post-live space event. I get that. COVID kind of drove you down that angle.
Yeah.
But are the economics the same? Is it sponsor-driven, or is it that you generate enough business that you don't care?
Yeah, so my agency actually has it's not a lead gen play for my agency. It's a separate company now, all this media stuff. So it's purely sponsor driven. And what I also came to realize was if I can make a big enough tent, right? If I make a big enough tent, I get enough people to register, and that's why it's free, then sponsors want to be there to get their brands and stuff in front of these people and all this stuff. And so that is the revenue model, is that it's all sponsor driven. Something I don't deserve. It gives me a lot of cachet that I don't deserve, where people think I know about that topic or that I'm more important than I am. So all of that kind of then is kind of this halo effect. Because look, we are in the age of personality driven businesses. Like, you need humans at the top of your business to drive your overall business. And I mean, I can give you a billion. I mean, look at Mark Zuckerberg. The guy doesn't wear a shirt anymore, 90% of his posts, because he knows it's a personality led, business, or Gary Vee or whoever. So that halo effect helps my agency business, even though we're not directly promoting there.
Yeah, but how much do you really believe? Like, I definitely see the personalities there for bringing in the crowd, keeping the action going. But ultimately, you do have to drive the bottom line. You've got to be delivering on what you're promising.
Oh yeah, 100%. But they have to show up first. I mean, if you want to lead with your boring brand and just saying, "Hi, we have this webinar coming up," or "Here's our new content piece," whatever, and then that's your funnel. Good for you. Your funnel is just gonna be a lot smaller. I think that if you go out there with a human tied to your brand, pumping all this stuff up, then you bring in more, and then ultimately, I think the bottom line is better. But that's my view of the world.
And so how are you splitting your time then? I mean, are you still kind of active CEO for the event company and then still running your agency, or what's the split? How much time are you spending on each as far as your normal week?
You should ask my wife that question. So we have the media business, Guru Media Hub, and I have my agency, Outcome Media. And I would say right now I'm 50-50. And it's horrible, and I'm losing my mind. And I keep saying 2026 is going to be the year of me being more organized. We'll see how that goes. But I think the other hard part, which you're doing right now, is also the hamster wheel of content. Having podcasts, having newsletters that you're involved with that go out weekly is both the best and worst thing that you can do. Because it gets you out there, holds you accountable to do stuff, but it's really tough to not stop.
Okay, so you've got Guru 2025 coming up November 6th, 7th. One of these events is right in the pipeline.
Right.
What's the big stuff? Kind of with every show, there's always like everybody's trying this, and here's the avenues we're going. What are the big things you've got coming in?
Well, so that event, Guru Conference, is the world's largest event about email marketing. It's free and it's virtual. And so we also have a theme this year. The theme is 90s versus 2000s. So we try to make it crazy, first off, with no on-demand. We got Nicole Kidman that's going to be there, which is pretty wild. But then we also are doing a marketing team dance contest where we're going to marketing teams dance. And because it's 90s versus 2000s, we have Lance Bass judging that contest. And then for something that has nothing to do with email marketing, we have the Guinness World Records involved. And we are going to be trying to break the largest number of people playing air guitar virtually at one time. We're trying to break Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, 188 people they had. So, and we have Flavor Flav doing that with us. So we have 25,000 people expected at the event. So that should be cool. But really, what are we going to be talking about? Of course, we're going to be talking about AI and the impact on email marketing. That's massive. We're also going to be talking about a lot of, little changes to deliverability, things about creative and design that are a little bit different. People think email's legacy and email's old, it's dead or whatever. It couldn't be further from truth. And it's always changing, always updating, always chaos.
You mentioned AI then. Of course, that's all the rage. I just fired up Apple Intelligence on my phone, because I had to upgrade and I got it running. And it's just amazing some of the stuff that I've noticed out of the gate. It's these rounding of the rough edges. Like Siri has a new voice that's got a lot more intonation and is very close. And I'm getting all these summaries on email and all this stuff. So, what should marketers be thinking about as far as all this stuff and taking advantage of it? And, what's going to come up in the session next month?
All right. Well, I'm really glad you brought this up because this one thing I think could have more of an impact for business and consumer marketers than anything else as it relates to Apple's iOS update. So the update is called iOS 26. They're now changing the updates to tie in with the year. So that whole iOS 18, 19, that's gone. So it's iOS 26 is what it's called. It's just rolling out. What people don't realize, people are like, well, I don't use the mail app on my phone, that little blue icon with the envelope. But 47% of all email, according to Litmus, is read by people clicking on that mail app, that blue icon on their phone. So this impacts you, whether you're a business or a consumer marketer, but you brought up the summaries, and that's the big thing. And here's how everyone can win. So now what's happening with the update that we all have on our phones, whether we realize it or not, and it's coming even bigger, is that on your lock screen, right, they're showing priority emails. And not just on the lock screen, but when you go into the app, it's showing this priority inbox. This is not like the promotions tab or any of that garbage. It's what they're deeming to be priority emails. So if you buy a ticket on Southwest, it's gonna be like, here's your upcoming trip. Or if you have an Amazon package, it'll show you the email for that package. But for marketers, what Apple's looking for using AI is certain words in your start of your subject line and in your body copy to decide, is this email, should it be a priority and thus show up on the lock screen and show up in that special status area when you open up the mail app? And you're like, well, I'm not Southwest selling a plane ticket, so I shouldn't show up there, but you should, and here's why. Because if you frame your emails, your promotional emails in a confirmation style way, you have over a 50% higher likelihood of showing up in the priority inbox. So for example, let's say it's for a webinar promotion you're doing. You start that subject line with access granted, your webinar invite is inside. Or you start with confirmation, you need to see our latest edition of blah, blah, blah. Things like access granted or confirmation or any of these words that are more speaking to it being something, let's say, you don't want to say it's official, but more official. If you're putting that in the start of your subject line, your body copy, you're going to show up in that priority inbox and your open rates are going to go higher. And I would say for the next 6 to 12 months, this is the number one tactic that marketers need to be aware of because it's the biggest change as it relates to the mail app.
Yeah. And how about, so obviously framing it as a confirmation email, I totally get that. That would cut you up there. Are there any other angles or ways to take advantage of this that you've been thinking about?
Yeah, the thing with Apple is that the biggest other thing is that they're stripped out pre-headers, right? So in your email, when you send out an email, what do you got? You got your from name, you got your subject line, then you have a pre-header. The pre-header is that the second subject line, that kind of gray line underneath the subject line. And with the update, they stripped out pre-headers. So pre-headers are not showing up anymore at all. So what you really want to be thinking about is the first few words of your email, whatever they are, whatever you're promoting, business, consumer, whatever, you really want to make sure that they are almost repeating your offer, that your offer is clearly stated, that you're not wasting time mentioning garbage, because that's where Apple's AI is really pulling from, because they are still filling the pre-header with information. It's just pulling it from your message, and you have no ability to decide what that is. So making sure that you are prioritizing the most relevant information is really important. And also in your alt tags on your images, when the images are not turning on, you want to make sure that your offer and your information is actually mentioned in those alt tags, because it's also pulling information from there. So you want to think about Apple differently than you ever have.
How about on other campaign fronts too, as far as, on the agency side for what you're doing? What are you coaching folks to be doing as far as, getting into the big one for me is search results, kind of this new SEO that's AI driven.
Yeah.
Is there anything on that front that you're watching?
I think that we are in the age of listicles. I really do. And I think that if you're not doubling down on list related content format across the board, you're just not doing marketing. And the reason being is, I don't tell you this, you know it's better than I do, whether you call it GEO or AEO, whatever you want to call it, showing up on places like ChatGPT or Claude or wherever is all about this authoritative voice. These are the 7 things you need to know. These are the FAQs that are most asked. Anything asked and answered, any type of list format is the content that the LLMs are picking up to really include in their responses. But it's also exactly what is working in email, right? I don't know if collectively our minds, because of AI, are just getting more formatted towards these kind of listicle things. But it doesn't matter if you're a consumer marketer. The 7 hottest toys this holiday season, or if you're an HR software tool, whatever, the 6 new things HR pros need to know into 2026. You're gonna be like, yeah, I've been doing listicles forever, but you need to prioritize it now more than ever, because it's factoring into you showing up in the AI results and all of it.
Yeah, that drives. Okay. We want to talk about all the hardcore stuff, but I just cannot let it slide. What got Nicole Kidman on the list as far as, that's the biggest speaker that I've probably ever seen for an email event.
Well, I get so much garbage so last year we had Sarah Jessica Parker. I think we had Damon John, we had Martha Stewart, and we had Joey Chestnut eat spam last year live against a bunch of marketers. And I always get so much heat. So I get so many emails like, what does Nicole Kidman have to do with email marketing? What does she know about email marketing? And I say, absolutely nothing, zero. She doesn't know email marketing, but she has an amazing business career. She's inspiring. It's fun to hang out with Nicole Kidman for 40 minutes, and everyone needs to get a life. I think that, if everyone's too scared to insert humanity into what they're doing, they're going to fail. It's just, let's have some fun. It doesn't always need to be on brand and whatever. So I do plan on asking her, she was in Batman Forever, which was a 90s, 2000s movie. And I don't know that was the highlight of her career, but I do want to find out if she was very excited to be in a Batman movie.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's you totally hit the point. Like, these events have to be interesting. You need something that catches and will run and gets on there.
Absolutely.
Okay, one of the other things that you talk about are marketing myths. You've got your podcast where you talk about what to do and challenge what's out there. Kind of, what are the big mistakes you see people making right now? What's on your top list as far as things people need to correct because it's obvious it's wrong?
Well, I think people think that whatever they're doing too much of it, and that's why it's not working. So, for example, let's talk about email. Oh, our email's not performing. We must be sending out too much. That's the problem. Our social media posts are not performing. We must be posting, too much. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Okay. The reality is, if your stuff's not working, it's because it's horribly boring and nobody wants to engage with it. And you sending out less email, okay, is not going to then, oh my God, there's less of it. This is so great, I want to consume it. No, it's because it's garbage. And the irony, for example, of email, here's the funniest part when you talk about that, is that the only way you stay in the inbox now, people think there are things that they're spam trigger words. Spam trigger words are not true, right? You can put free in the subject line, you can capitalize, you can use emojis, doesn't matter. You don't go to the junk or spam folder because of what you put in the subject line. That is a myth, and people still put out spam trigger word lists. It's absolute nonsense garbage. But the irony of email marketing is the reason you stay in the inbox versus the junk or spam folder is based on engagement. How often are people opening, clicking, whatever? And if you don't send out enough email, you cannot actually generate enough engagement to stay in the inbox. So, for example, if you're not sending out your list at least 5 times a month, you have almost no chance to generate enough engagement to have the highest inboxing rate possible. So this idea that I'm sending out too much and that's bad, or I have to avoid these words, or and that's bad, or even like, let's talk about social media. Oh, if I post on LinkedIn, I can't put a link in my thing because I know that that's going to depress my engagement. It's not true. As a matter of fact, literally yesterday, LinkedIn put out a post themselves saying it's not true that putting a link in your post will depress engagement. It's just that nobody wants to leave the platform because whatever you're putting there stinks. So anything that you think is a must do or never do is the thing that you need to test because it's probably not true.
And so where do you start with clients then when they're in that trap of like, okay, everything's kind of doing so and not that great? What do you tell them or work on them to get it to be more engaging and to kind of get that interest in there? Is it just a matter of nothing's framed right, or does it go all the way down to what your offer and product is? How do you usually start approaching that?
Yeah, I think that we try to test where their minds are at. What is their line in the sand? Well, we can't go there. That is off-brand guidelines. We could never use, a meme in our newsletter. We can never do that. And we want to find out what the never do's are. And then that's kind of where we want to push, right? And also, I think for anybody out there that's in a marketing services business, not everybody's a good client fit, for what you do, right? And we could tell very quickly if like, okay, we're not speaking the same language here. And they just want to do the same old routine, promote a webinar with 2 circles of people's heads that nobody cares who they are except their moms. And that's all they want to do. Like, you know what? Good luck. Smell you later. We're not a fit, right? Because you got to make sure that you're a fit for whoever you're working with. So we try to figure that out really fast.
Okay, you just came back from Inbound. We've been watching and wondering what's going to happen as far as that being San Francisco. It's been Boston forever. Yeah. So how did that go? And what did you get out of that? Was there anything you saw there that made you think twice?
Well, they talked about AI. Shocking. No, Inbound was incredible. HubSpot's giant user conference, and they crushed it moving it across the country. A lot of new folks were there. You had obviously a lot of SaaS companies, a lot of kind of the Silicon Valley folks all being there. But in terms of what I would say the number one topic there was AEO or GEO, whatever you want to call it, and this idea of how do you get your stuff to show up in all the platforms. And the thing that I would tell anybody out there is have somebody that's unrelated to your business. Because let's say on ChatGPT, you've already asked it too much stuff. It already knows you. Go on to ChatGPT, and let's say your business is, let's say you sell HR software. I don't know. And go on to ChatGPT and say, what are the top 5 HR software companies I should consider? I'm trying to onboard one. And make sure that you're showing up in those results. And if you're not, you want to turn around and go to ChatGPT, drop your link in there and say, okay, what can I do from my website here to have my company show up in the results more often? And it will tell you exactly what to do. And coming out of Inbound, I think this idea of prioritizing your showing upness in all these AI platforms was, I would say, the number one thing on everybody's mind.
Yeah, that was the hot take. How about for yourself, as far as, are you a gearhead, or are you always checking out new software? Like, what kind of stuff are you playing around with and looking at right now that you think you're going to put to work in the next year?
I think my organization needs to do a much, much better job of chopping up content. I think that being out there for whatever your business is, doesn't matter. It is a volume game now on social media and on YouTube. It is no longer just putting out this one great piece of content every week and blah, 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 blah. It is a volume play and pumping out 50 YouTube shorts a week, 30 Instagram reels a week, 15 posts on LinkedIn, like volume, and using these AI tools to really chop up, repurpose, spit back out all the content that you're creating, because that seems to be the North Star for winning heading into 2026. So I would be doubling down on all the tools that are out there to kind of repurpose, reformat, and get out more content.
Okay. And I came across, you've got a book coming out in 2026. Stupider People Have Done It. What's the story with that? How'd you get dragged into writing a book?
Oh my God. Well, you did your research. I appreciate that. So first off, all the book proceeds are going to the V Foundation for Cancer Research. I'm not keeping $1. And that's really how it all started. I got approached to coming out of Inbound last year, as a matter of fact, while I was on the stage giving a main stage talk at Inbound last year, I started talking about this advice that my grandpa had given me. I was really down early in my career, and I didn't think I could do anything. And I was at my office one day, and my grandfather walked in. I didn't know who was coming in. He's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I don't think I do it. I don't know how to make sales. I suck, whatever." And he looked at me and he said, "I'm so sorry to tell you this." He goes, "But the truth is, stupider people than you have been able to do it." And it resonated with me. I'm like, whoa. I go, I agree with that. There's somebody stupider out there. And I talked about this on stage at Inbound. And then I got an approach after Inbound. Hey, you should, write a book about marketing lessons, life lessons, whatever. I'm like, who the hell am I? I'm an idiot. And I was like, I'll do it, but I want all proceeds to go to this V Foundation, because then I feel good about why I'm doing it. So, listen, I've been at this thing for a minute, this work-life thing. So it became a collection of work stuff, marketing stuff that I think is just ridiculous. And it's called Stupider People Have Done It. It's the strangest book you'll ever read. It drops in April. You could buy it right now on Amazon. And you are awesome if you do, because you're helping out kick cancer's butt. The book might suck, but at least you'll be able to help out a little bit.
All right. Well, no, I'm sure it'll be worth checking out. So we'll have links to that in the show notes. How about, as we just wind up, anything you've watched, listened, read to that you'd recommend to the audience in the past couple of weeks? Anything good?
Well, I watch horrible TV. I mean, that is my jam. So I really do. I watch almost every reality show and every bad TV show. So right now I just finished watching The Girlfriend on Amazon Prime. That was excellent. My 18-year-old daughter's trying to get me to watch The Summer I Turned Pretty. I don't think I'm watching that. That's kind of I'm not the ICP for that show. I am watching Dancing with the Stars, although I don't understand. I'm very disappointed in Dancing with the Stars, because the roster of people they have 2 people from The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which is a great show, and I watched it, but I think it's weak casting by ABC to have 2 people from one show. So that's my issue. So these are the important things that I'm thinking about right now.
No, that's critical viewing. K-pop is huge over here, and rom-coms are always on the list. So no one's accusing us of having too much taste. But That's fine.
Amazing.
Need to have good time off.
Yes.
All right, so we've got Guru 2025 coming up November 6th and 7th. We'll have links to that in the show notes. It's free. Sign up. You have to go do that and go find out what Nicole Kidman thinks about Batman. That's critical for me, so I'm there. Jay, thanks for joining us today.
This has been amazing. I love the show. Everybody subscribe to the show if you haven't already. It's awesome. Good job.
All right, thanks. That'll do it for this week. So until next week, enjoy the coffee.
You've been listening to Marketing Over Coffee. Christopher Penn blogs at christopherspenn.com. Read more from John J. Wall at jw5150.com. The Marketing Over Coffee theme song is called Mellow G by Funk Masters, and you can find it at Musical.ly from Mevio or follow the link in our show notes.